Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome into the P Coffee Brown Show. Of course, I am your hostess with the mostest, P Coffee Brown, and we've got some amazing guys in the building on tonight. We're going to be talking about an interesting topic, legacy and leadership. So we're excited to have these amazing men in the building tonight as we talk about this discussion. And I'm excited to have one of my lifelong friends, like literally, we grew up together. Joe Talbert is in the building. He and I grew up back in Detroit, Michigan. So, a long time ago when we were tiny humans in the 70s and
Yep.
80s.
What's
And then
going
we have
on?
John. Yes, then we got John Thompson in the building out of the Chicago area. Super excited to have him on, international best-selling author. And we've got Jason Thibodeau in the building, who has exaggerated about who he is, actor, content creator, and awesome guy. Oh my God, I'm just playing. He is all those things. No, for real, for real. So as you guys are coming in, go ahead and share. Gentlemen, as you guys are here, you can actually share to your page so that your communities can get involved in the conversation as well. So while you guys are doing that, let me tell you a little bit about the show. What we're doing, we have actually pulled out from the hot seat. We had the hot seat for 6 years running. Super excited about the shift to go into the P Coffee Brown Show, where we talk about love, light, legacy, and leadership. We want to bring more awareness to our communities and add value in more than just the traditional relationship space, which is what the hot seat was designed and based around, was totally about relationships between men and women and children. So we wanted to broaden our horizons and expand to our own show. So we're excited about that. And again, thank you guys for being in the building with us on tonight. So we're going to start with our newest member, which is Joseph Talbert Jr. So Joe, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and how you add value to the community.
I guess I'll start. I'm the oldest of 10 kids from Detroit. And I guess growing up, I didn't realize that it would make me a little bit more responsible, a little bit more mature. And so I went to the Navy. I got out of the Navy and started learning about money and wanted a lot of it. And so I started in business and just some amazing mentors. And I felt like it was my calling, if you will, a ministry or whatever, to teach people what I knew. I didn't want to be in church just talking to people. I wanted to actually be changing lives, putting money in people's houses, hiring people. And so since then, I have a trucking company. I run an investment company. And really just showing people how to make money and really change their lives, their mindset, all that stuff. I teach people, work on you more than you work on anything else. And if you do that, everything around you rises. And so I feel like, and I'll stop after this, it says that Jesus came that I might have life and more abundantly. And so my philosophy is my first priority is to enjoy myself. That's my number one priority. Enjoy my children, enjoy my work, enjoy my money, enjoy my mom, enjoy my friends. If I'm not enjoying stuff, I don't do it. And so I build my life in a way to enjoy it. And I show people how to do the same.
I love it. I love it. John Thompson is in the building. Welcome back, sir. We haven't seen you since the release of your latest project. So welcome on in. Good to have you back with us, sir.
Yeah, thank you for having me back. It's I thought I was forgot about for a little while there, so it's pretty good to.
No, nobody forgot about. How can we forget about you? You're John Thompson. I mean,
Okay.
really? So welcome back, sir. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do to add value to the community.
Well, first thing I do that adds value to the community is that I am a husband of one wife for 26 and a half years. I've raised 5 sons. I'm a grandfather of 4 now. We just had a new grandbaby. My two oldest sons who are married have blessed us with 4 grandchildren between the 2 of them so far. We just had one on Isaiah Wesley, who's got my middle name, on February the 10th. So we're excited about that. I'm a pastor as well. They're in the city of Aurora, Illinois. We do a lot of good work in the community, from bike giveaways to feeding the the people that are in need, to helping people with financial literacy training, to working with the educational system there in Aurora in the mayor's office to make sure that the marginalized and the disenfranchised are represented as well. So we do a lot of good things in the community on top of just the pastoring of the church.
Awesome. I love that. I absolutely love that. Jason Thibodeau, what's good?
Man, what's up? How are y'all?
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, as you can see in the title, no, I'm just messing. But
Terrible,
actor, mentor, dad, just try to be an all-around hard worker. Used to mentor high school boys. Actually, I'm really starting to miss it more and more now. So I might be getting back into doing that more through the church, local church here in Houston. And just working on projects. I actually just had a project come out on Tubi today, the Bayou City Murders. Go check it out.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, check out that police chief. And that holster is real, and so are those guns that I have on me. But yeah, just community outreach, man. You always got to give back. So I'm here, baby. That's what we're doing.
I love it. I love it. And I love what you talked about with the community. We're definitely keeping Pastor Joel and Lady Victoria in our thoughts and prayers during this unfortunate time of the incident at our church. Just devastating blow to the entire city of Houston. I can't even begin to explain it. So just keep them covered in your prayers. This is something that is really, really a terrible thing to have happen, at a local ministry. And it's crazy. So we're just keeping that young boy in prayer, that child in prayer. I forgot what gender. I'm sorry. I think it was a little boy, but I can't remember for sure. But we're keeping that child in our thoughts and prayers. I believe it was a little boy.
Yes,
and he's fighting for his life right now. So we're keeping him in our thoughts and prayers. And even the family of the lady that came in, we're keeping her family covered in prayer as well, because listen, she lost her life she lost her life as a result of what happened. And so that's still a loss for somebody's family. So we're keeping her family covered in our prayers and thoughts as well, for sure. So let's get right into it. Let's get right into it.
Real quick, Koffe, just before you get started. Bayou City Murders is what you said, Tips?
Yeah, Bayou City Murders on Tubi.
Okay, good deal. I was just making sure I put it in the list here. It's on Peacock as well.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, I'll be checking it out.
And Amazon Prime. Yeah, most of the movies I'm in, they're either on Peacock as well or Amazon Prime. So yeah, it's about 8 of them that's out now.
That's what's up. Congratulations on that. That's what's up. Y'all finished? y'all done? Y'all done? I love it. I love it here. No, but on a serious note, let's get this conversation popping. So seriously, we're talking about legacy and leadership and how important it is for a guy to position himself to be able to lead, not even just to lead a family or to lead in business, but to lead himself. So when we talk about that, we're talking about from that perspective, legacy and leadership. The first thing a guy's got to do is lead himself and lead himself well before he can add value to others. And so Joseph kind of alluded to that when he talked about being the firstborn child in such a large family and how it gave him a sense of ownership and responsibility and leadership. And I know, Jason, you actually are the only child in your family between your parents, but you still were in such a leadership role, even as a young guy before you started, moving around and doing other things in your adult life when you got to your wife and had your children and things of that nature. And I know, Pastor John, you've been leading for a very long time as well. So I want to ask you guys, and anybody can just hop in when I throw the question out. What was the most important thing that you had to learn as a young man in order to self well? The most important thing that you had to learn as a young man to lead yourself well?
Accountability, number one, which is definitely lacking a lot of times these days in adults. I had to be accountable, especially being an only child, because a lot of times if I didn't do it, it didn't get done, right? So, when mama says go outside and cut the yard or wash the car or do whatever, pick up around the house, I mean, I didn't have any siblings to rely on. So I had to be accountable for making sure that I completed that task. If I did not, of course, there were consequences. I am a 70s baby. So, yeah, consequences were a little different back then than how things go these days, right? But I had to be accountable. I mean, I had to grow up. I had to rely on myself a lot of times, and if I didn't, then things didn't get done, and that's unacceptable.
I love it. John, Pastor John, I saw you unmute as well.
Well, sure. One of the things that I had to learn as well as a young man, especially with a young family, was delayed gratification. That I didn't have to, that I could pay now, P-A-Y, pay now, so that I could play later, P-L-A-Y, as opposed to trying to play at that time when I should have been growing and building and sacrificing. Then I was able to, now I'm actually able to live in the fruits of that now. And that really helped to set the substructure for my life and my family and for the things that we're able to do and accomplish and achieve now, because we learned the art of delayed gratification, the ability to say no to ourselves in the immediate sense so that we could actually say yes later.
I love that. I love that. Joseph, I saw you unmute.
Well, I'm playing with the button because I didn't know what it was. Until I heard you say something about unmute.
This is his first time on the show, y'all, so he getting used to these. But I love it. I love it.
But for me, self-control. People don't have self-control a lot of times. So I had to learn self-control and just control yourself. Every time I got in trouble, it was somebody else's fault. It was somebody else to blame, and just realizing that I control me. It's one of the things I say to my son. I've been a single dad since he was 10 months old, and he just turned 7. And so I'll tell him, I'll say, raise your hand. He'll put his hand up, and I say, put it down. He puts it down. I say, raise your hand again. He put it up. I said, now who is in control of your hand? He'll say, me. I said, exactly. You control yourself. Nobody ever is to blame for the actions that you have that are coming out of you. So for me, that was really difficult when I was young to get that, because it was just so easy to blame somebody else. And in my mind, I was right. It wasn't my fault. But learning the difference between fault and responsibility just leads to self-control.
Ooh, that's good. That's good. Fault and responsibility. Unpack that some more. You went on mute after that. That was a lot. Go ahead and unpack that some more. Fault and responsibility. Yes, that was good.
Responsibility. Somebody Earl Nightingale said it way back in the day. I don't know if you guys know who Earl Nightingale is.
Of course we do.
He said, okay, for sure. Able to respond, response able. And so I remember one time there was a big puddle of milk in the kitchen by the refrigerator. There's 10 kids in my house. And so I went and I made my cereal. And my dad came in the kitchen and he said, hey, did you make that mess? Like, how could you get your cereal, make that mess and leave that mess on the floor? I said, I didn't do that. I didn't make that mess. He said, so that means you stepped over a big puddle of milk to get to the refrigerator, make your cereal and go sit down. He said, I know it wasn't your fault that it's there, but you couldn't be responsible for cleaning it up or accept responsibility. Or in a very simple way, are you able to respond to it in a productive way, even though it's not your fault? And if the answer is yes, you can control yourself.
I love it. I love it. Pastor John, I wanted to go back to you when you talked about that delayed gratification. Mm-hmm. As a man, how important is it for a young guy, say a young guy just starting out, he's in his early 20s, he's just getting out of college, got his first plays, and just kind of tapping into life. How important is it for him to make sure that he has his building blocks in place before he gets out there and starts to enjoy the fruits of his labor, if you will? How important is that?
Sure. And let's be clear, there are levels to enjoyment of the fruits of your labor, right? You don't have to, I mean, don't get me, you don't have to withhold all happiness, but you don't necessarily get to enjoy everything to the fullest either. So Christ says it this way. Can I use a little bit of scripture? Is that okay?
Yeah, you can. You mean you know you are a pastor.
All right, well, just a little bit.
we kind of expect a little something of the Bible.
Just a little bit, man. Christ gives a parable, though. He gives a parable of a man who builds his house on sand versus a man who builds his house on a rock, right? And the Bible says when the storms came, the house that was built on the sand fell apart, but the one that was built on the rock was able to withstand the storms of life. Well, it takes time to build that foundation, which is what the rock represents, that your house is in fact going to stand on. As a matter of fact, if you're building a house today, they're going to spend more time on the foundation of the house than they will on the upper levels of the house upon which you will live. Because if the foundation is no good, the house isn't going to last. Well, the same thing is true of how you build your life. In the early days of your life, you need to be focused on the foundation. Get your financial literacy in place. Get your insurances in place. Get your disciplines in place. Get your accountability structures in place. Get all of these things in place so that then when you begin to build the upper levels of your house, it'll be able to stand because it's on a sure foundation.
I love that. I love that. And Jason, I saw you spark up, Jason Thibodeau, when you heard that. Go ahead and chime on in on that when you heard about that house built on the sand versus on a solid rock foundation.
No, that's actually very powerful and is very true, because if you don't solidify a solid foundation, anything that you build after that is sure to perish, right? At some point. And I really like what Brother John said, is because really and truly, without that foundation, without that delayed gratification, and taking that time to really build that foundation, once you start building, you're going to find yourself having to build over and over and over again, because that foundation is not sturdy. If you don't learn the lessons that you're supposed to learn, if you're not willing to open up and learn lessons and take teachings from other people who have been where you want to be. That's the important part. You should never trade places with any, don't take advice from somebody you don't want to trade places with. And one of the things that one of my mentors, and Koffe, you know who I'm talking about when I make this reference, one of the things he used to always say is, I can look at your 5 closest friends and I can tell pretty much everything I need to know about you. Right? I can look at the finances of your 5 closest friends and I can pretty much tell you what it is that you probably make every year or every month, etc. Right? Or whatever, crap that you get yourself into, etc. So I agree with what Brother John says, that, I mean, you really, really, really have to take the time to build that foundation. It might take a week, it might take 10 years. But the thing is that you should constantly be building, you should constantly be learning and expanding yourself. One of the things that I like about the acting aspect of what I do is because you have to make yourself uncomfortable. You understand what I'm saying? So if you're always comfortable, then you're not growing. You have to make yourself uncomfortable. So I constantly put myself in positions to be uncomfortable. I constantly put myself in positions to stretch myself, right? Whether it's a role, whether it's something going on with the family, like what I was telling you, Koffe, I just recently had a whole bunch of financial challenges, that actually put me in one heck of a bind. But you know what? You don't see me over here stressing. I mean, I will figure it out. I'll work on it. But the reason I'm not stressing is because I built that foundation. I'll land there.
You know what? I love that you said that. The reason why I'm not stressing, because I still have a foundation even in adversity. Like last year, perfect example in Texas, our it was a mess. It was like 107 degrees during the summertime. And of course, our land and everything suffered greatly because we had a drought for like 52 days, no rain, not a cloud in the sky. And so the concrete started to explode. And it was interesting because, the cities were like, what are we going to do about this and all that? And it was interesting because this lady got on, a news anchor, and she said, well, listen, the good part about it is if you had your home built, by such and such time or on this such and such amount of, above level or whatever she was talking about, she was kind of breaking it down. She said, you'll be fine because your home was built on a solid foundation. All you got to do is make sure you're watering your foundation to keep your foundation hydrated. Y'all will be good. And so as she was saying that, I was listening to her, and me being a homeowner, I was like, I have never, as long as I've, owned properties, I never heard about watering your foundation. I'm thinking to myself, well, it's going to rain. I mean, I water the yard, isn't that? And it was funny because I started, taking classes, especially having been active in the insurance industry, started taking all these classes about a house and what really happens with a house over time and what really happens with the roof over time. And, just different things about a home that, even if it is built on a solid foundation, you got to maintain that thing. You can't just let it go because it was built on a solid foundation. You have to maintain it. And I like what Pastor John was mentioning about you still can enjoy without putting yourself in a situation where you can't handle whatever your responsibility is. So you got to have a harmonious balance when it comes to that. And so just thinking about a home, it's so many things to consider when you think about a home. Like, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do what, I got to do what, I got to pay for woo, and it's a lot to consider and a learning experience. Even with the house built on a solid foundation, you got to still water it. You still got to make sure that even when you water it, you got to make sure the water is the right temperature at the right time for the right reason and for the right length of time. There's so many different variables that come into that even after there has been a foundation built. So after your foundation is built, you've established and things like that. Let's talk more about the legacy concept of thinking. When it comes to legacy, what is your first thought that comes to your mind? I'm going to start with you, Joe. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about the word legacy?
The first thing is intentionality. I know that you have to be intentional. A lot of people are not intentional about legacy at all. Whatever the kids and grandkids and great grandkids create, it just so happened to be that way. I already have 4 boys, and I daydream about the day that they're sitting at my feet with their wives and their children and their grandchildren. Like, I see it in my mind. I think about it all the time, and the way I deal with them is with that in mind. I take Joshua, that's my baby boy, everywhere I go. He sees me speak. He knows about businesses. He's inside of all of the semi trucks that I buy. He knows about the employees. When I go do seminars or preach at a church, I make sure I find the time to put him on stage with me and let him just say hello or something to get him out of his comfort zone. I'm consciously thinking that I have to create something that goes beyond me in these guys. And so I'm very intentional about putting it in them, letting them see me do it. And even the money, a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. Some people debate it, but my understanding for that verse is my children's children are my grandchildren. My mom and dad was supposed to leave an inheritance for my children because that's their children's children. And so I feel like God is a genius. If money can sit for over 2 generations, it's gonna have very, very awesome implications for that second generation. And so I tell my boys all the time, I say, guys, if I don't make the money I'm trying to make now and the name and the stuff in your time frame, it's okay. I'm doing this for your kids. I said, the truth of the matter is my mom was supposed to do this for you. My dad was supposed to do this for you. So I'm working overtime right now. But I'm already teaching them, and they're young. And I asked them all the way. I said, are you thinking about your grandkids? They don't even have girlfriends, but I'm already like in their minds, baby, you got to do something, leave something. You got to be thinking in this way. So for me, that first word is be intentional. And so many people are not. It's like shooting craps. They roll the dice, they throw them out and say, "Ooh, look what we got." Versus ever since he's been 10 months old, I've been working on this communication. Ever since he's been growing up, I've been working on his idea for money. I told him the other day, we're going to go get your bank account and get you a debit card. I used to give him my debit card and let him walk up to the counter and say, "Can I get a cookie?" And I said, "Mate, make sure you get the receipt. Speak up." So being very intentional about the fact that one day, out of all 10 of my sisters and brothers, and I'm not knocking anybody, but one day when they are set and the foundation is laid, like you said, and they're wealthy and they're living a life that their relatives are not living out, in my head now, I'm thinking somebody's going to say the reason we are who we are is because great-great-granddaddy Joseph did something different than his 9 sisters and brothers, and that's why we're here. So I'm very intentional about it.
I love it. I love it. Intentional. So, Jason, what do you think about the first word that comes to your mind when you think about the word legacy?
Information. And the reason being is because, wow, Brother Joe was over there talking. All I could think about was how information used to be spread. And what I mean by that is I remember having conversations with my great-grandparents and my grandparents, and that's how information was disseminated, in our culture, especially from, as, we would pass down information. Now we have a lot of stuff that's in books. Remember, back in the day, not everybody could read, so basically everything was word of mouth. Now we have things being documented, but is that information being shared? Or are we hooked on TikTok and all of these other social medias, and that information isn't getting out? One of the things I love that the brother just said is he's working with his kids and he's already thinking about his grandkids, right? So he's already making sure that the information that he's received, that he's actually pushing into them. And all I could think about was my mother, being the strong woman that she is. Unfortunately, my kids didn't get a chance to meet my father before he passed. And one of the things I think about, especially when I was just listening to him, is my oldest daughter's in college and I watch how she moves. And I'm thinking about my mom and I'm like, that's you. That's what you left behind. That's part of your legacy. That's the things that you instilled in her. Now, me being a man, of course, I instilled that manly aspect of what to look out for, how to judge character, etc. But watching her become that young lady, that's my mother. That's her mother. You know what I mean? That's my wife. That's teaching them that. And all I can think about is whenever they, my daughters actually have their own kids, I'm hoping that my mom is still around so I can say, watch this. Now, I'm watching what you did. Now let's see what let's see how we keep this going. But a lot of it is information. We got to make sure that we're still talking to these kids and stuff and not letting them and relatives, etc., our community, and not letting them just play on their phones and everything else and not actually receive information that they can pass on.
I love that. It makes me think about when my children were younger. It's so funny, especially having worked in the public school sector. People used to ask me all the time, well, parents used to say, well, what do you think about my son, little Johnny, having a phone and he's second grade? I said, do you want me to tell you what you want to hear, or you want me to tell you what I understand about all this technology stuff? No. Tell me what I said. I'm not going to tell you what I think. I'm going to tell you what I know. It's killing them quickly. Their attention span is in the toilet. They're not even able to communicate effectively when we're trying to have a conversation. If I give, a classroom full of children a book, a lot of them cannot even communicate the information in a basic book, not even something complex, but they want to get on their phone and they want to just get on there and do all these fast bursts of energy going through their little brains. And it's causing them not to have a long enough attention span to be able to even, communicate or have an effective conversation or have a healthy dialogue with another human being. They're trapped inside of this false reality. Somebody made a comment to me the other day. A parent was like, oh, we just got into AI. I said, no, ma'am, the World Wide Web is AI. We've been in AI for many, many years. It's just revolutionized over time, like everything else has revolutionized over time. Like, we're not outside getting water from a well to come into the house and take a bath. I said it's the same concept. It's just a different time frame. So you're looking at it from that perspective. No, man, we've been in AI since the World Wide Web became the World Wide Web. So the moment that we got on those computers and started pulling up information without somebody physically telling us the information, we were in AI. So it's just revolutionized over time. That's all it is. And the smartphones, everything else, all this other stuff. When we got phones, all of that is artificial intelligence. It's just not a human person in your face giving you the information. And so I was telling them, I said, hey, I would strongly recommend that you lay off of that technology with your young children. Allow their brain to develop in a natural way. Give them books, put books in their hands, allow them to learn how to read outside of a tablet, outside of a computer. Let them read books, sit down and read to them, put information inside of their minds directly from publications, sit down, communicate, talk to them, have conversations with them, like the two of you were talking about, and also Pastor John. Sit and talk with your children, have dinner with them, sit around a table and have dinner with them, help them, let them come in the kitchen and help prepare the meals, let them learn how to read a recipe, let them understand measurements while they're younger, and so on and so forth. There's so many things that we're missing now in the time that we live in. And like you said, with the information, it's like it's so much information coming at them that it's hard for them to decipher what is real and what is not real. And that's the biggest challenge that a lot of children are having now. You know, I came across this one little girl. She really, really touched me. I still can see this little child in my imagination. She was just acting out. I'm like, what is going on with this little girl? And as I began to watch her, I learned that the child could not read, but they kept pushing her through the system. And finally, they said to me, you know, we only can retain a child twice in their whole educational career. So they kept pushing her because she's too young for them to keep holding her back at that age. I said, but pushing her is not giving her any kind of foundation, like Pastor John talked about a while ago. She has no foundation whatsoever. There's nothing for this child to build on. What is going to happen when she gets a little bit older? So I love what the two of you shared so far. But Pastor John, I want to go over to you. I'm telling you, this information technology and all this stuff that we're in, it's a blessing and it's a curse at the same time. We've got to learn how to balance that thing out. So Pastor John, what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about that word? What is the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about legacy?
Well, and I appreciate absolutely what Jason and Joseph have said with intentionality and information. I actually had two words that came to my mind immediately, and they kind of go into what you were talking about. The first one is character. Because what has happened is our technological advancement has exceeded our character development. And because our access to technology has exceeded our character, it's like giving the keys to a car to a 10-year-old. He can't handle it. And so we have all this information, and we have all this access, not just information. We have all this access to information without the character to know how to manage it. So that's an issue that we have there. But then the other word that came to my mind really quickly was influence. Legacy, because that's essentially what we're talking about here. We're talking about how I can influence the next generation. Now, back to your conversation about the internet and our AI and our online access. Essentially, when we put telephones and computers and tablets and video games into the hands of our children, what we're doing is ceding our ability to influence them to technology. Now we're letting back in the day, we used to put the kid in front of the TV. Well, essentially what you're doing is you're telling the television that you have the influence now over the life of my child, And so as it relates to legacy, we have to consider the character. We can't just consider the monetary side of it, because you can give a lot of money to a wicked person So we have to make sure that we're developing the character of the person, and we have to do that by maintaining our position of influence in their lives to lead them into a godly direction.
I love that. I love that. Influence, information, and intentionality. Y'all, listen, I done got a couple book titles since I've been listening to y'all. I just wrote some things down.
Hey, Koffe, can I chime in?
Yes, sir. Go ahead. Jump right on
Yeah,
in.
yeah, because one of the things,
Yes, it's so
and
good.
Lord knows that my little so-called self-proclaimed ADD started acting up, so I made sure I wrote it down. The things that I wrote down is not as a people, but as people, we have to stop allowing ourselves to just solely be entertained, going along with what John is talking about, especially with kids, but even as adults, we have allowed ourselves to become a culture of people who want to be entertained, right? So we're not necessarily learning and using our imagination as we used to. We even find ourselves as adults. We come home, we're tired, we go plop down in front of the TV, turn on our best shows, put our kids in front of, let them have the phone, the tablet, or a TV or whatnot, and we're allowing ourselves to be entertained. Where's the building of, I think he said, of the character and, the use of the imagination that we used to have back in the day? Think about it. Our toys back in the day didn't make noise. We made the noise. We pushed the cars around. Then, like in the late 80s, early 90s, and everything else, you couldn't find a toy that didn't make noise.
True.
Right? We allowed that to continue on. And we keep allowing that to continue on. So if you want to build legacy, then we need to communicate. We need to like John was saying, we need to make sure we're building that character. We need to make sure that we are actually teaching our kids, as Joe was saying. And, we need to stop allowing the powers that be to create these cultures where we're not growing like we should. And what I mean by that is, if you really think about it, think about how much information we have at our fingertips now compared to 5-10 years ago. So now we have all this information, and to the elites and to the people who don't want us to have this information, that's dangerous. So how do you move the people in the way that you want to move them now? That's the reason why you have apps like TikTok and stuff. I love TikTok. You can actually get some really good information off of there. But one of the things I also notice is that most people that get on TikTok, they just want to be funny. They just want to entertain. They want to get some type of clout. They want to, get whatever little piece of information out there. But as the other two gentlemen said, this is short spurts. These are short spurts of things. So not only are you getting some information and some redirection at times, but it's also training you to not have any form of attention span. One of the things I would tell my daughters when they had school projects is, you know what, you can find a lot of stuff on Google. You know where you can also find a lot of stuff? In those encyclopedias I have in that bookshelf right there in the other room. I was like, think about it. If all of your friends are getting their information from Google, would it not behoove you to open up an encyclopedia, actually research and read some things? And one of the reasons why I was pushing them towards encyclopedias, because that's already written down. That's text, right? One of the things that I have been doing over probably the last 10, 15, 20 years is I stopped downloading books on tablets and computers. Because if you read the fine print at any given time that they want to, they can click a button and that information that you bought and you purchased, whether it's a movie, text, whatever, they can make disappear. But once it's actually printed and you have it on your bookshelf, there's nothing they can really do about that. That is actually a printed document, and all they can do is in the next edition change the information, but you still have that information.
Now, you know what? It's funny you said that. I'm gonna lean into to Pastor John. There's a book that Napoleon Hill did called The Laws of Success in 16 Lessons Complete. And it's so crazy because I've sent so many people to go get that book, and it's not the one that I got. Like the one that I got in print, it's old and the pages are all crazy looking and everything. And it's so funny because when I send people now, they like that's not in that book. I was like, yeah, it is. And the book is so powerful. I'm gonna, as soon as I kind of get on the other side of this master's program, I'm gonna start digging back into that book. But it's got so much legacy information in it about, you know, what happened with our forefathers who built these incredible businesses off pennies and became billionaires. And they understood, I don't need $1,500 from every person. I need 1 penny from a billion people. If I get a penny from a billion people, I'll have $1 billion. And so just the fundamentals and the foundations. And he talks about the things like, you know, like Henry Ford, and all of the information about Henry Ford is in. It's a lot of information about Henry Ford in there, and about how the group of people around him, like you were talking about earlier, Jason, the people that were around him were the real brains behind him building that freaking empire. It was not him. It was the people that were around him that helped him to really build that magnificent empire. Because he was like, I'm going to be the dumbest person here. But if I push this button, this scientist is going to come in here. This person's going to come in here. This person's going to come in here. I can get this information from this person. And then somebody mentioned Earl Nightingale earlier. The reason why we're doing what we're doing right now is because of Earl Nightingale. He was a voice before any of us started talking. He was the biggest radio personality that there has ever been. Nobody has topped him as far as that voice is concerned, you know. And so a lot of things that we're doing now, and a lot of us don't even really think about it, is it came from somebody else that came before us for us to be able to have the access that we have and to have the ability that we have to do the things that we do. So I love what you said about getting the books in print. And that's another thing that I do. I will listen to audio books because I learn better that way. However, if it's a book that I'm really captivated by, I will go ahead and purchase that book to add it to my library. Because like you said, once it's in print, they can't do anything with it, but you know, get frustrated because you got all these books in print. Yeah. And like the one I just said about the Napoleon Hill book, I refuse to let that thing get out of my sight because I know how valuable it is in print.
Hey, one of the things real quick that I thought was very interesting that I found out over this past week is that Walt Disney as a company purchased the rights to the NIV Bible. I'm saying that. And one of the things that people have already started to notice is that they're pulling scriptures out. They're pulling out verses here and there, you know, and text. And think about it. How do you purchase the right to a Bible?
Well,
something to think about, right? Definitely something to think about. I'm sure, John, hey,
because you got the money for it. You got the money to do it. That's legacy production. Even if it's for the negative, even if it's for negative, it's still legacy.
Correct.
And that's a great little point that Jason just brought up about Disney with purchasing the rights to the NIV, because the question doesn't become how do you do it, but the question becomes why would you do it?
Right, exactly.
The why you would do it is what's most important, because obviously there's information that you want to have access to that you want to limit other people's access to. That's why you want to do it. But Jason said something else when he was talking as well that triggered something in my head that was so awesome as it relates to how we deal with and teach our children. You know, many of us came from poor backgrounds. You know, we were poor and all of these kinds of things. And one of the things that we purposed to do once we came of age and got a couple of nickels in our pockets was that we were going to make sure that we gave our children the things that we didn't have access to.
Oh boy!
And that's a noble venture. However, what we didn't do was while we were giving them the things we didn't have access to, we neglected to give them the things that we do have access to.
Right.
You know, like, and Jason was talking, what triggered it was when he was talking about the playing outside and the creativity and you make the noise and all of those kinds of things that we had to think outside the box, which made us smarter. And this generation of males is the first generation of males in the history of the world that will be not as intelligent as their fathers.
Wow. That's deep.
First generation.
That's crazy. Wow. That is real crazy. Joseph, I want you to hop on in here on that one. So, you know, you were talking about all of the impartation that you're putting into your sons. And as a father, Joseph, what is it like? What is your village like? What are you seeing in the community of men that you fellowship with that they're doing with their sons so that they won't succumb to what Pastor John just talked about. I read something about that recently, Pastor John. I was like, what? It was kind of baffling to me when I read that. But what are you doing as part of legacy building to make sure that your sons don't succumb to that ignorance? That's like literally going backwards.
Right. I focus a lot on the way that they think and the way that they process information. The verse in the Bible that says, when I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, I did as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. I just broke it down. I put away childish thinking. I put away childish reasoning. And I think that that's the problem with the social media, with the TV, all that stuff. There's like, if you're going to be a man, you need to be able to reason. You need to be able to process information. And so many people's processors are broken, or they're very, very slow, like a computer. And so I try to stay in their faces to make sure that their processors are always faster, the way they process information. I remember when Joshua he couldn't even talk yet, but I would give him a choice. Do you want applesauce or mashed potatoes? And he couldn't answer that question, but that was introducing him to choices so he could know how to process. And I remember one time I said, hey, you can get a spanking or you can go to bed. Those are your choices. And he paused. He was probably 4. And he said, hey, I think I want another choice. And I was so excited because I was waiting for the day that he realized you can have as many choices as you decide you want to have. But that's the way we think. That's processing information, reasoning, subtext, context. And so I've been talking to him like that for a very long time. And people always thought I was crazy, but I talk to all my boys the same way. Do you want, Daddy, I don't want my food. I said, okay, you can throw it away. And he would throw it in the garbage. And then we all get ice cream. And I would say, no, you can't have any ice cream, baby. You didn't eat all your food. And he would say, what? I said, we got ice cream because we ate our food. You didn't get ice cream because you didn't eat your food. If you can live with no ice cream, I'm okay with that. I respect your autonomy to decide I want to live with no ice cream. So the next time he said, hey, Daddy, I don't want to eat all my food. I said, throw it away. And he was like, well, do we got dessert today? I said, yeah, we got dessert today. He said, I think I'll eat it. So I try to deal with them in a way to force them to process information, to reason through things. And that's what's missing in men, the inability to process through things. I'll watch a dude get fired from a job because he didn't know that he couldn't process through. If I go off on my boss, I might not have a job tomorrow. And that affects my wife, that affects my house, that affects the car I pay for. And there's no reasoning, there's no processing the information in the right way. It's funny to me. My car broke down, so I got fired. And I asked him, what do you mean you got fired? How long you been at your job? I've been at my job 7 years. So in 7 years, you haven't met anybody that you could give gas money to come and scoop you up? Like, where's your ability to overcome issues and process information and become a creative problem solver? And so that's what I'm looking at, is so many men without that ability, especially younger dudes that just look at their life and it's just like, oh, this must just how it is. And they don't have any wherewithal to say, you can do this. I was talking to my son the other day. He was thinking about, and it's so funny. My oldest son, he went to college. He graduated from UCF with a degree in computer science. My second oldest son didn't want to go to college. He had business mindset and stuff. So he calls me one day and said, hey, I'm thinking about going to college. I said, why? He said, because everybody's saying I should probably go. And so maybe I'll just do that first. I said, son, first of all, you hate school. I said, second of all, you had a nice plan to go out there and conquer the world. And now you're shrinking back because of what other people are saying to you. And again, as a man, being able to make decisions, process it out, reason it out, and keep it moving no matter what people are saying contrary to what you're trying to do. And I mean, he's only 19, so I'm still building that in him. And so my oldest son, I would never tell him don't go to college. He's built for it. It was his plan since he was 10 years old. It's all he's thought about, dreamed about, and talked about. But him, all he's ever thought about, dreamed about, talked about was all the stuff he was going to do in the business and this, that, and the other, you know. And I said, buddy, don't do that. Don't you go to school. Stick to the vision God gave you. Stand firm on it and exercise it. And I said, you're young. Maybe it is a mistake, but it's a mistake that you'll make, and God will be faithful over your life because you're following the vision he gave you. And so again, the ability that men can have to say, this is what God has put in my heart to do. This is the plan that he gave me. I'm processing it. It's not willy-nilly. I'm not running across the street without looking both ways. It's thought out. It's planned out, and I'm going to do it. And I think that's what's missing in so many men's lives now, is the ability to just have good reasoning. You can't talk to your wife like that, bro, and your marriage thrive. Like, that didn't come to your mind. You can't be messing with women and like where's your ability to say, this is probably what I should not be doing? But you know, Pastor was saying, I think we live in a world too with all of this technology stuff and all of this online, is this idea of your truth. I get so sick of people talking about their truth. I'm like, what about the truth? Because if it's my truth, I can frame my truth any kind of way I need it to look, to do what I want to do and not make good decisions. But the truth is, brother, you can't talk to your wife like that and grow something. You can't neglect your kids and think you're just going to throw money at it and have a great relationship. But that's not my truth. But it's the truth. Give it 15, 20 years and watch how you're not in a good relationship with this kid. So anyways, it's that, man. I look for men who are good with their children. I'm a collector of excellent things, is how I see it. And if I see a dude at the park, I have a lot of cool friends right now because they were at the park talking to their kids on their knee, down at their level. I love to see a man kneel down to look his baby girl in the eye. I love to see a man kneel down to look his 4-year-old in the eye and talk to him. So when I see that stuff, I say, hey, man, I noticed the way you were talking to your son or your daughter. I think it's really cool. I'm always trying to become a better dad. Can I get your number? Maybe we can connect. And so I keep myself surrounded by men who are incredible fathers, great communicators, good connectors with their kids. And it keeps me going. So like you said, you know, if you look at me and some of the men I'm around and see how we deal with our children, you can look at our successes and the 5 people I hang out with. It's the same. Like I don't play around with the people, with the men, especially that I get with. I can't be around no whack dudes. I can't be around no soft dudes. I have men around me that keep me very, very accountable to a lot of things. And again, it's just the processing, and men are weak, unfortunately, a lot of times now. And it's like, bro, stand firm on the vision God gave you. Process through this stuff. Reason like an adult, not like a child, always crying and making excuses. Stop it.
I love it. I love it. Jason, we're going to go to you and we're going to be out of here in a couple of minutes. We're almost at the top of the hour. This has been amazing. I love what you guys have shared thus far. Absolutely incredible. Go ahead, Jason.
No, I was just going to say that listening to you two, it actually made me think about when I was raising my daughters. My oldest daughter, as I mentioned, in college now, she's 19. When she's probably about 4 or 5, et cetera, getting into school age, I remember having both male and female parents, men and women, that would say, hey, man, you really raising her and everything else, man. It's like, you raising her to a point to where none of these little boys are going to be able to talk to her and everything else. And I was like, so you need to step the hell up and do what it is that you need to do. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not going to dumb down raising my daughter to be the person that she should be because you won't step up and raise your young man to be the person that they need to be, which also it was a catalyst for me getting into mentoring young men more and more. So I was doing it anyway. I still do it, even though I'm not a part of that program currently, because even around prom time, I was buying a bunch of suits and stuff, because going to these premieres, I don't want to look the same every time, right? I want to make sure I'm sharp. I want to make sure I'm presentable. And I would see these young men in there with most of them with their moms, you know, trying to pick out suits and everything else. And I would stop doing what I was doing, even though I had my wife and kids in there. And I'm walking over there and I'm like, hold that suit up. You know, I'm making sure it fits right. I'm making sure they have a tie that matches and everything else. Don't know these kids, you know, to save their life, but I see they're in there trying to do something. And I'm like, hey, whether your dad is here or not, or whether your mom knows what she's looking at or not, you see me in here trying on suits and you see my posture. And it's funny that 100% of every time I have ever done that, even if they was with their dad, they were receptive. And that basically means that when you're walking like you're supposed to walk, people will respond. And what we need is to help build this legacy and to keep continuing on with our building of our culture, is that we need more people who aren't afraid to approach people and say, hey, let me help you real quick. You know what I mean? I'm loving what these brothers are talking about and how they're talking about how they approach other men, because what I've also noticed as a part of culture, not just our culture, is that especially with men, we can't take anybody giving us praise. We have a really hard time these days allowing somebody to edify us. Hey, like this brother said, he walked up to someone in the park because he realized how this man was talking to his kid. I love seeing that. And I also love to let them know, hey, dude, I see you. But it's amazing how at times a lot of these guys get offended and be like, what you trying to say, brother? Hey, man, I ain't trying to hit on you. All I'm saying is I was over there. I noticed what you just did, and I'm praising you. Good job, brother. And I'll walk off. But I've noticed so many people these days cannot take edification from someone else, even when they're doing the right thing. We got to work on that.
Wow. Wow. I love it. I love it. We are already at the top of the hour. This is amazing. So excited to have these guys in the building on tonight. We've got to get them back, guys. We've got to get them back on the show again for another round of this conversation, possibly in a few weeks. But guys, thank you so much for being a part of the show tonight. We're talking about legacy and leadership. If you missed the segment, you will definitely be able to catch the replay and hear what these amazing men had to say about legacy and leadership. Jason Thibodeau, John Thompson, and Joseph Talbert, thank you so much for being a part of the show tonight. At the end of the segment, they're going to put their contact information inside of the chat on Facebook for you guys to be able to connect with them directly and follow them on their platform and see what it is that they are doing and what they are up to and how they are continuously adding value to lives all over the globe. So tune in, tap in with us on the next edition of the P. Koffe Brown Show. We're so excited to have had you here in the audience. Grace and peace. And we'll see you guys again on our next edition of the show. Good night, everybody.